Kneel before Zod!
You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
I'm gonna take a bath.
Bad dates. I'll alert the media.
Boys, keep off the moors.
It's evil! Don't touch it!
The name's Pliskin.
No wire hanger!
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Ghost Story, released December 15th, 1981. It was written by Lawrence D. Cohen, based on a novel by Peter Straub, directed by John Irvin, and released by Universal Pictures. Before Peter Straub's original novel, Ghost Story, was even published, Universal had already purchased the film rights for nearly $250,000. English director John Irvin was attached on the strength of a 1974 TV movie called Haunted: The Ferryman. To fit the 500-page novel into a 2-hour film, several unpopular adjustments were made to the story, but we'll discuss those at the end. Screenwriter Cohen even suggested to Universal that they consider a miniseries format a la Salem's Lot, but they wanted a movie. They paid for a movie. They were going to get a movie. Offers were put out to Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart for unspecified lead roles. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was attached, and I would also guess that John Houseman's role was offered first to Orson Welles, since the character is specifically referred to in the book as resembling Mr. Welles. Welles and Houseman were once producing partners back in the Mercury Theater days, but their relationship had so soured after the release of Citizen Kane that Welles once said, "I have only one real enemy in my life that I know about, and that is John Houseman." The rest of the Central Chowder Society cast were rounded out with Melvyn Douglas and Fred Astaire, both of whom are mentioned in the actual novel on which the film is based, but they refer to just Fred Astaire movies.
Casually mention it. Right? Okay.
The studio's confidence in casting 4 legendary performers in a horror film was inspired first by Laurence Olivier's 1979 turn as Dracula, and emboldened by the successes of The Exorcist, The Omen, and The Shining, which reestablished horror as a respectable genre. Unfortunately, this didn't translate much into box office success, and the film only made $13 million from a reported budget of $23 million. It was nominated for the Best Horror Film Saturn Award, but lost to An American Werewolf in London. We open on the snow-covered town of Milburn to the sound of a woman crying. Inside, John Houseman as Sears James paces in a dark sitting room. Embers glow faintly in the fireplace. We cut away to the restless sleeping of Melvyn Douglas as Dr. John Jaffrey, mumbling as he tosses and turns in bed.
I don't believe it. No pulse. There's no pulse. No pulse, no.
His wife enters the room to check on him. Now to another bedroom where Fred Astaire as Ricky Hawthorne is similarly plagued beside his wife in bed. And finally, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. as Edward Wanderley, who seems the most tortured by these shared nightmares. The opening credits play out over footage of liquid dripping down the screen and revealing a full moon at night behind it. The water pools until it fills the screen, and suddenly we hear the voice of John Houseman telling us a ghost story that takes place around midnight.
A little after midnight.
It was a cold, bleak Christmas Eve.
Do you guys recall the last film we covered that starts with John Houseman telling a ghost story that takes place right around midnight?
The Fog?
That's right.
11:55. Almost midnight. Enough time for one more story.
This time the story's about a man who swore he heard a voice in an empty cemetery. We see the faces of his audience, the other old men from the start, sitting in the red glow of the fireplace and listening seriously to the story. The man finds a freshly disturbed grave. We see the story acted out, and the camera floats through the dirt of the grave to reveal a living man in the coffin below, trying desperately to scratch his way out. The men rise to head home, but first they share a toast to the Chowder Society, which is what they call themselves.
I mean, like, is this seriously Are You Afraid of the Dark for old men?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I submit to you the Chowder Society.
Yeah.
The tale of the dead man's underground.
But they throw brandy into the fireplace instead of sugar.
It explodes into the room. Oh, God, and we burned down another mansion.
Have you seen Haunted Honeymoon?
I have not.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like
Yes.
the butler is constantly drinking and he gets startled while he's standing next to a fireplace and he spits it out and the fire just bursts.
We cut to the skyline of a larger city. Later we'll learn this is New York. And then into a skyscraper where a bathtub overflows in a bathroom. Craig Wasson, as David Wanderley, approaches wrapped in a towel and asks an off-screen woman who she is.
Who are you?
Sleeping.
Who are you?
Welcome me.
Now we see the naked woman in his bed, and he walks up to turn her over. He puts a hand on her back, and she's cold to the touch. He walks around to see her face, and it is rotting off of her skull. He throws himself backward in a panic and crashes naked through the hotel room window and 24 stories down through the glass ceiling of a pool enclosure and face first onto the tile 1 foot to the left of the pool's water.
Yeah, just
barely missed it.
It's like Keith David in The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
Oh.
A couple feet to the right, he might have survived this if the glass didn't cut him to ribbons, as Grandpa Joe might say.
Who will be cut to ribbons?
But I also feel like, knowing what I know later in the movie, I feel like it's weird that he doesn't land in the water.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like there's actually a good reason for him not to land in the water, but we'll get
because
there.
it really kills him.
Yeah.
Well, that and something that happens later.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of interesting visual effects are happening here all at once because there's no glass in the window.
Right.
But he flies out and they like animate or composite glass
into it,
breaking through the window.
Yeah. And then we get that weird, like, it reminds me of the scene in Austin Powers when they're in the club.
Yeah.
And the woman's falling and she's like turning in the air.
Yeah. It looks better than Ronnie Cox flying out the window in RoboCop.
Sure.
But it still looks pretty weird.
Yeah. And he comes crashing through this window and then just slams into the tile, which you could tell is kind of like a rubber mat or something that someone's falling on because it like sinks when he hits it. A phone rings in a bedroom, and a second character, Dawn Wanderley, also played by Craig Wasson, but with no mustache, stares down the phone, seeming to predict that this is bad news.
But see, this was so...
You're like, did he just have a nightmare? What
yeah,
happened?
because we've been opening up with nightmares, and it was so surreal with the "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Who are you? Like.
He's like, oh my God, Dad, I just had the worst nightmare. I had this shitty mustache. His father's voice informs him that his twin brother David is dead and he should come home. His dad picks him up at a bus stop. Over dinner...
But why should he come home?
Because there's going to be a funeral in town, probably.
Oh, they're going to bury him in town? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they probably already have
sense.
A plot. Just put him right next to Mom. Over dinner, they argue over whether David's death was an accident or, as Dawn for some reason suspects, murder.
I knew the girl he was going to marry. I slept with her, Dad. Did you hear me? I slept with her.
That's a weird brag. We cut to David's funeral and then back to the house where David and Dawn's father, Edward, has a nightmare in a chair in his study screaming out for David. He tells Dawn that since they are the last of their family, that maybe they can go fishing when the snow melts. That night, Ricky Hawthorne cries in bed in response to the sound of a woman sobbing just outside his bedroom door. The door is jostled and then opens into the room with a beaming white light. He screams out, and his wife is struggling to wake him in bed. His wife blames the scary stories the Chowder Boys are always sharing. They return to bed, and we cut to the elderly Wanderley in the midst of another sweaty night terror. He's real juicy in these.
Yeah.
Within his dream, we see David getting married, but his bride steps away from the altar, and when she whips off her veil, we cut back outside the dream to Edward screaming in bed. And when Dawn comes in to check on him, he claims to be fine through a locked bedroom door, so he can't even get to him. The next morning, Edward goes for an ill-advised walk in a blustery snowstorm. The mailman calls out a greeting to him on the road, and Edward doesn't respond at all.
Yeah, I guess he's the mayor, which is like a new piece of information that I get from this mailman
which
scene.
he's not the mayor in the book, but yeah he's the mayor here.
I like my little joke here is that he's wanderlaying around.
And his son is Don Juan. He continues walking, and in his POV, we see he's following a specter of his dead son David. He comes to a bridge, and a nearby snowplow driver spots the old man stopping at the middle of the bridge.
What the hell is he?
A woman calls out to him.
Ned? Ned.
And when he turns to face her, it's the same rotted face of the woman from David's bed, and Edward pushes himself back away from her, over the ledge and into the icy water running under the bridge.
So this scare actually got me.
Yeah.
Like, because I was expecting something to be there, but not this.
Like someone stopping him from jumping.
Yeah, I was not expecting like a very wet corpse.
Right.
To just be there like
screaming at him.
Yeah, it was very jarring.
But you saw what happened to him when he fell off of this bridge, right?
Well, he hits the ice.
He hits the ice next to where he broke open the water. Okay. So it's like mirroring of what happened to his son, where he lands on the solid part next to the water.
Hit something hard and then go into the water. Yeah. Okay.
So you're saying he should have rolled into it or something in both cases?
Yeah.
Do you guys recall the last time we saw someone fall from a bridge and crash into a frozen river below but not completely through it?
Was it that weird Christmas horror film?
It was a horror film, but it wasn't a Christmas one. Well, it's a New Year's.
New Year's Evil?
No.
How many New Year's horror films have we watched?
At least 2. Terror Train.
Was that New Year's?
Yeah.
Okay.
The snowplow driver sees the man smashed on the ice below and a woman across the bridge with her face obscured in darkness giggling at the scene. We cut to a local city office where we learn that Wanderley was also the mayor of this small town. Mm-hmm. The rest of the Chowder Boys show up and loudly reject the implication that this was a suicide. We'll learn that the Houseman character and the Fred Astaire character are like partnered attorneys, and this is like their law office.
And the other one is the town doctor. Yeah.
Up in his attic, Don is going through his father's old boxes and looking through photos. He finds a photo of the Chowder Boys standing with a woman outside a house in the 20s or 30s. The woman is turning her head too fast to make out any features because it's just a blur. We cut to James's office where Ricky shares a premonition of danger. James doesn't have the same nightmares as the rest of the team and dismisses them as coincidence. We cut to the boarded up house from the photo Don found. IMDb trivia says that the spooky mansion was actually the work of fabled matte painter Albert Whitlock, who earlier this season did all the backdrops for Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1, and he even gets a line on the film. He gets to play a character on screen.
Chariots! Use chariots! Low mileage! They're great!
But it doesn't look like a matte painting to me. Like, I know that's the point, but the camera's moving, and it seems like it has dimension, so I don't know.
They're saying her house?
Yes.
Is a matte painting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, well, that's weird, because the house also appears in other
the flashbacks, yeah,
in other angles and other images.
When we see the cop pull up to it and it slowly enters frame.
Well, so then I would imagine when it's pristine. Well, one of the incarnations is
right. Maybe it's the decay, the decaying, like
it's painted
like it's
over
an
the
overlay on top of the house.
That makes sense. That's possible.
It has to be one of the two. It has to either be the house when it's in good condition is the not real one, or the house in the poor condition is the real one.
Ricky explores the building's interior. He hears soft giggles inside and eventually finds father and son squatters, Gregory and Fenny Bate. Turns out they're not father and son. They're actually brothers. One's just much older than the other one, but I assume they were father and son. Ricky accuses them of trespassing, but they claim to have the owner's permission to be here.
No one lives here. Someone lived here. Someone fantastic. Huh?
You've lived in this town all your life and you don't know?
What?
Somehow, Gregory knows Ricky's name and threatens him all the way out of the house, back into the snow.
We're going to tear the soul of this pathetic town and crush its bare bones between our teeth.
After Ricky leaves, we hear the Bate boys talking with a woman off camera about the next stage of her plan. Ricky goes right to the police to identify Mr. Bate from a file photo. In a local courthouse, the death of Don's brother David is declared to be an accidental suicide. Don is obviously upset by the ruling. Don goes to speak with the Chowderheads, and Ricky says that they can talk privately in about a half an hour. The police confirm Ricky's testimony that Bate and his younger brother are crazy. Bizarrely, both of them escaped from a mental hospital together. You wouldn't think that people with such a huge age gap between them would be put in the same facility and be able to escape together, but apparently they did. The desk sergeant Churchill tells Sheriff Hardesty that they both belonged to a cult in California before that. Hardesty arrives at the boarded-up house. At their lunch meeting, Ricky confesses to Don that he believes the dreams they're all having are a message of warning. Dawn shows Ricky the picture he found. Sheriff Hardesty explores the house but can't find the squatters. Back at Wanderley's home, Dawn is digging through pictures again when some machinery whirs to life upstairs. An elevator lowers from the ceiling, and Dawn is petrified when Gregory Bate steps out of it.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He restoreth
How did you
my
get in here?
Dawn arms himself with a fire poker when the man doesn't answer. He presses a key on a dusty old pipe organ. Gregory orders his brother Fenny to attack and then goes back to reciting nonsense. Fenny produces a gold necklace from his mouth and drops it in front of Dawn. It has a large green gemstone on it. Gregory and Fenny leave together. We cut to a gathering of the Chowder Boys. Ricky's wife Millie brings in a candelabra for ambiance and accuses them of foolishly scaring the shit out of each other with their half-assed Goosebumps stories. Someone got buried alive. Mwah! And you can't sleep for a week? Are you guys 80 or 8? Ricky tells the others about a picture Dawn found. James says they've kept the secret this long, they can keep it a bit longer. Ricky confesses his fears to the table that more of these octogenarian Chowder Boys might die soon, which is a safe bet.
Yeah.
With or without the curse. But Dawn interrupts the meeting to agree with Ricky. Dawn offers to buy his father's slot in the Chowder Society with a ghost story, a true one. He worked at a school just north of Florida and dated a fellow instructor. One day, the dean's new secretary, played by Alice Krige, stares him down in a hall and somehow calls to him by name without being introduced. Later, he seeks her out and learns her name is Alma Mobley. He asks her on a date tonight when the dean pops out to drag him into his office.
You've been doing exemplary work, Donald.
Thank you.
I don't know what your plans are, but I was just thinking maybe we should extend your stay here another year.
Later, at dinner, he feeds her ice cream with her eyes closed. She laughs and returns the favor, which is a strong word. Why are we doing this? She draws a mustache on his face with chocolate ice cream, and we cut to them rushing through a rainstorm into her house. She invites him upstairs to make love. Inside, she sits on the floor before a space heater brushing her hair as Dawn opens a music box.
Do you like it?
It's beautiful.
She tells him she's scared of thunder, and he moves closer to hold her and calm her. We cut to them having crazy sex on the couch, like dark shadows flying around the room sex. The next morning, he asks her questions about herself, but she's hesitant to answer any of them. He tells her about his hometown and promises to take her there one day. At school, they lock themselves in a restroom for more sex, and then they are out to dinner, and Dawn notices with his hand that she's not wearing any panties. Later again, in a bath, he says they'll be going on a trip together. She's excited, and then he pulls her below the surface of the water. At first, he's concerned when she doesn't pop back up until she rises screaming like a banshee. And then we just cut away from this scene like, all right, that was just another cute moment. We cut to some time later, and Dawn wakes to Alma watching him sleep with her eyes fixed on him. He can't jog her loose from the apparent trance, and then she falls back onto the bed. We cut forward again to Dawn and Alma spending time in a beach house trying to decide on a wedding venue. For some reason, Alma would rather go to Dawn's hometown of Milburn to meet his family.
I want to get married in the town where you grew up. The same church. I want to walk down the aisle in my white dress and veil, and I want everyone to be there. Your father, his friends, the whole town.
It's weird that you sorted that by my father and his friends first. That night, Dawn wakes alone again and rises to look for Alma. He finds her naked, staring out to sea and making weird whisper promises.
I will take you places where you have never been. I will show you things that you have never seen.
Alma?
And I will see the life run out of you.
I definitely shouldn't have said that part. She walks right past him in another trance. He tries to wake her, but she just laughs in her sleep. In a rainstorm, we see them driving back to her place. Before he turns to leave, he asks to postpone the wedding a bit until he finds out why she keeps mumbling about murdering him in her creepy trances. She is less than enthused at the change of plans.
You have to.
I'm sorry.
You don't know anything!
He backs out of the room and leaves. She tips open the music box, and we get a shot of the same bejeweled necklace on the floor. Later, we see Alma haunting Don's dreams, riding a small canoe straight toward him until he wakes up. When he tries to touch base with Alma the next day, she's gone. A no-call, no-show to work, and the dean calls Don in and takes back all the nice things he said earlier.
You're lax. You're lazy. You're slipshod. You disappear for days on end without saying a word to anyone. Disappointed. Disappointed!
When Dawn goes back to Alma's place that night, she has cleared out the apartment and left town. We cut to another New York office where Dawn's brother David is instructing employees on a business deal when a call from Dawn comes in. Before Dawn can even say why he's called, David launches into a story.
About a month ago, I was up on Columbus Avenue on business, and somebody called out your name. Uh-huh. And I turned around, and there's this great-looking girl.
David doesn't explicitly say her name, but suggests that Dawn may have gotten the wrong impression about a woman, and Dawn warns his brother to stay away from her.
She is not real. And you know when you touch her, she's cold. I don't think we're talking about the same woman.
But I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real.
It seems clear from the brief chat that David plans to marry her and hangs up on Dawn. We cut back to the Chowder Club, and Don punctuates the story with the reveal that there was no such woman as Alma in any record he could find. When his brother died, he was found to have been alone in his room. Or not in his room. Way below his room. James tries to dismiss the veracity of Don's story until he produces the picture of the woman with the blurry face, insisting this is the same woman that he and his brother became entangled with. James is now the only person debating this situation when Don pulls the necklace with the blue-green gem out of his pocket and places it on the table. John Jaffrey pleads desperately to share the story of his nightmares, but his wife Millie comes in and kicks everybody out because they're overexciting her husband.
Mm-hmm.
That night, Ricky rises from bed and has a coughing fit in the hall. We cut back to Jaffrey's room as he shouts from inside a dream, and then we dive into the dream, where he stands over a body on a slab and confirms for someone off camera that it has no pulse. When the corpse on the table sits up with a shriek, we can only see Alma's pale face for a moment before we match cut to Jaffrey with his hands around Millie's neck in the bedroom. She struggles desperately to free her throat from his grasp. He slowly passes out and lets go of her neck, and the next morning we see Millie bringing him breakfast in bed.
I wouldn't be bringing him breakfast in bed.
Like, how are we just totally fine with this? Like, this is casual, like, nightly occurrence.
She's not okay with it. She has a problem with it. She brings it up here. This is not a nightly occurrence. This is the first time.
No, but I feel like I would not be trying to take care of this person right now.
Fine, then I'm not going to strangle you in the middle of the night.
Good?
Downstairs, she passes Alma, dressed in black, and promises to be back down in a minute to help the woman, who she seems to be mistaking for some kind of customer. She tells her husband about his murder attempt last night, and she demands to know what his dreams are about, but he claims not to remember. Millie gets him started by repeating some words from his trance. He vaguely agrees with the words she recites, and confirms that someone had no pulse and yet moved. Millie understands somehow that this is not just a dream, but something that really happened to him, and again he refuses to elaborate.
You're a stubborn old mule, John Jaffrey.
On the way out, she mentions a patient waiting downstairs.
I don't see patients.
That's what I told her.
Downstairs, she starts to tell the woman Jaffrey is unavailable, but she's disappeared. Back in his room, Jaffrey is shaving and seems to suffer a heart attack. Millie can't hear him calling her name, at first over the whistle of boiling water on the stove. Jaffrey is panicking, trying to find something, and Millie assumes the woman took whatever it is before she left. She mentions the woman's last name was Galley, and Jaffrey freezes. He struggles to request an ambulance and tosses all his medicine bottles to the floor in search of something. When he turns around, the girl we've known as Alma is standing there in the black cloak, and she pulls her hood down to smile at him. He calls her Eva, and we hard cut to her face rotted away again and dripping with a thick layer of green slime. She screams loud, and when we cut back to Jaffrey, he's dead, collapsed against the medicine cabinet. At the next meeting of the Chowder Pals, James is finally ready to admit that they've kept this secret too long and agrees to tell Dawn the story of Eva Galley. Only James and Ricky are left to tell the tale.
Well, what happened to her?
Well, that's obvious, isn't it? We killed her.
No, that was not obvious.
Yeah, it was very matter of fact. It was like, yeah, we killed her.
No, Mr. Lebowski, it had not occurred to me.
That had not occurred to us, dude.
We jump 50 years back in time. The camera tracks across the faces of 4 friends. The first 3 smile wide, but don't look enough like their old versions for me to tell which one's which. And the 4th, I assumed, is a young John Houseman, staring intently at a musical performance with a thin manicured mustache. There's one guy I would assume is supposed to be young Wanderley, because he looks the most like Craig Wasson playing Don and Dave, but it turns out the mustache guy is Wanderley. We slowly realize the boys are actually watching a girl in the front row. People talk about her being rich, and she turns around when she hears her own name whispered in gossip. She notices the boys watching her and shoots back a mysterious smile. Outside later, all 4 boys court her at once. At a dance, most of the dance floor is filled with men in dresses. Eva invites Wanderley to the dance floor. Later, we see them posing for the photograph Dawn found earlier. One of the boys says something about her just before the photo is taken, and she turns to react, hence the blur we saw. Next, the 5 of them are running through a field together toward a picnic. Do you guys recall the last Craig Wasson movie we saw, where a girl and her multiple boyfriends were running through a field together, and the girl was tackled to the grass before all the boys shied away and awkwardly left her alone?
4 friends?
That's right. Now we see Edward rowing Eva across a river, whispering sweet nothings, and then to a cabin bedroom where Wanderley is apparently having confidence issues.
Do you want to try again?
Do you guys recall the last Craig Wasson movie we saw, where the guy who tackled a girl into the grass and then walked away failed again to seal the deal with her in the very next scene in a bedroom with an open window?
You want this one, Richard?
Is it 4 friends?
It's 4 friends. Out on the lawn, the other 3 boys stand in the yard and launch into a barbershop trio performance of a song about Eva. Do you guys recall the last time a girl's 3 boyfriends serenaded her from the lawn outside her house? She asks Ricky for a ride home that night, and the Chowder Chums sit beside the cabin fireplace drunkenly sharing stories. The guys ask Wanderley about his time with the girl, specifically the sex part.
What was it like?
It was awesome.
Hours later, the boys drunkenly drive out to her sorority house to ask her back out with them. I guess it's actually her home.
Yeah.
She answers the door herself and invites them all inside. The house, not... Never mind. Eva dances with young Jaffrey, and he falls drunkenly to the floor when James steps up to accept his turn to dance with the girl, but Eva tries to call it a night, and Wanderley tries to back her up. Before they can leave, Eva changes her tune and offers all 4 boys a dance, but it's quickly clear that she means something more than dance. Amusingly, young Ricky tells her that he can't dance before growing up to be played by Fred Astaire, one of the most famous dancers of all time. She turns to James.
Dance with me, you little toad.
Instead of doing more Do You Recalls, I'll just play the clip here. Here's Eva from Ghost Story.
I've had enough.
I haven't. I think I'll take a bite out of you.
And here's Georgia from 4 Friends.
I think I could ravage all 3 of you. I'm starved.
Now we are approaching the climax of the film. James calls Eva a slut, and she slaps him before turning her hatred on Wanderley for kissing and telling, even though they never actually got anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
When she threatens to share the truth, Wanderley shoves her to the floor, and she cracks her head hard on a wall and lands unconscious with a kink in her neck. Jaffrey feels no pulse and announces the girl is dead. James is already putting together a plan to bury the secret forever.
No, we've got to hide the body. Hide it where it will never be found.
They drive her out to the town lake, tuck her into the back seat of their old-timey car, and shove it down a hill into the water. As the vehicle sinks from view, they watch the outline of her body through the back window, and at the last second she appears to rise up, but Jaffrey assures them the girl is dead. As a counter-argument, Eva presses her hand to the window and then screams for help as the car quickly fills with water. Wanderley races out, but doesn't even reach the car before it disappears under the surface forever. Or mostly forever. A long time. The men hug and cry about the terrible thing they've done, and we dissolve back to John Houseman finishing the story for Dawn. James says that in the years since, nobody ever came looking for her, as if she were a figment of their imaginations.
What about the car?
Still at the bottom of the Dedham Pond.
Dawn suggests that Alma and Eva are the same girl, and she is powered by their stories and their guilt, and aided by Gregory and Fenny, the squatters in her home.
How and why?
Yeah.
We'll let you decide.
It's like, no, I don't know if you were listening to the story. We killed that lady.
Yeah.
why would you assume that they're the same person if you haven't seen both of them?
I have so many questions at the end of this movie.
He asks Ricky to visit the house with him, and he agrees. Later, we see Ricky snag a knife from his kitchen and then dodge questions from his wife before promising to explain everything soon on a European vacation, their first ever.
So, what is it about the house?
I don't know. And what is it about these two squatter guys? Like, we
I
already
don't know.
explained that they're just crazy guys that live there. In the book, it explains in much more detail why the Bate characters are interesting or relevant at all. But in the movie, it's just like, who cares? They're just some squatter guys that you ran into.
I guess it's a bait and switch.
The whole Chowder clan arrive at the boarded up home. On their way upstairs, Don makes a bad step and falls through the rotted stairs, breaking his leg. James makes a brace with a stair rail and offers to get help as an excuse to leave. Ricky wanders the rest of the house with a flashlight, occasionally calling down to Don to announce that he's okay, as if Don could do anything to help from down here. It's like, now I'm getting stabbed by a couple of squatters.
Yep. There's a ghost. It's
Your
very
leg's still
scary.
broke, though, and you're down there, so...
Yeah, I don't get what searching the house or going to the house was going to...
Especially since they've already done it.
Yeah.
And they found everything that was to find here, which is the two squatters. Ricky finds Eva's name written on the pane of a dusty mirror, and downstairs, Dawn can hear her laughing. Ricky stops responding to him, but then makes his way downstairs. James drives his Rolls Royce through a light snowdrift and doesn't slow at all as the silhouette of a person in the road gets closer and closer. It's Eva in a bright green sundress, despite the weather, and somehow the car passes right through her, revealing her skeleton beneath the skin as he intersects with her ghost. And it's like, were you literally trying to kill her this time? Because you didn't slow down at all.
Like he clearly saw her
Right.
way down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So for like 30 seconds, like, I gotta get closer before I wonder what that thing is. Like it could have been literally anything.
Yeah.
Like not a ghost.
Could have been a rock.
Yeah.
It
And you
would have
didn't
just crashed
slow
right into
at
it.
all.
Ghost rock.
It's just the guy from Austin Powers. No.
Yeah, exactly. When he gets his bearings again, he sees the same snowplow from earlier coming right at him, and he swerves off the road, giving the other driver another front row seat to an apparent septuagenarian suicide.
Yeah.
It's like, why do old people keep killing themselves next to me? He crashes almost full speed into a snowbank, and when he checks his bloody nose in the mirror, he sees Eva behind him.
Dance with me, you little toad.
But then, Eva is Fenny, the crazed squatter boy, who jumps into the front seat to attack him. This part freaked me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very scary. Because it's so dark back there already, and then when
But
the person comes forward.
the squatter boy is real.
Right. Maybe.
In the movie.
Is he? He's there the whole time.
In the film, yes.
Okay. I don't understand.
I don't get it either. I mean, presumably he snuck out of the house and hid in the car intending to kill the guy, and the guy came out and left and didn't know there was a kid in the back seat.
The kid waited till he drove through a ghost, crashed, and then attacked him.
Yeah, it's all part of their plan. When James never returns, Ricky walks out to the road to flag down a ride. Miraculously or suspiciously, one pulls up right then, and it's Gregory Bate driving. He tells Ricky that they're headed to Eva now, and she will grant him eternal life for bringing her Ricky.
Good Lord, she's in the park.
Alive. Still alive.
She tricked you. You won't live forever.
We live longer than you.
Oh, no, you won't.
No immunity from bullets. This is just such a crazy move. It's like, it grabs the wheel.
Yeah. And he pulls the knife out of his pocket and stabs it into the guy at the driver's seat, causing him to lose control of the car and then flip it completely upside down. With all the chowder heads spent, it's time to haunt Dawn back at the house.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get why...
You got to take the whole bloodline out.
But, so, is the implication then that none of the other people had kids?
I guess.
I think Wanderley's the only one who had kids, and he had 2 of them.
Right.
And she's about to finish that off. Water starts pouring out of all the walls around Dawn. He spots a full moon in the sky above the house. Amazingly, Ricky kicks his way out of this upside-down car somewhat unscathed. He was like 80. This guy was born in the 1800s, and he's kicking his way out of an upside-down car. We see Eva, dressed as a bride, moving through the halls upstairs, and Dawn just listens to her dress drag along the floor. She comes down the stairs and passes uneventfully over the hole Dawn fell through in them. Somehow, enough time has passed that Ricky has already brought police and tow trucks to the pond to exhume Eva, and then realizes he needs to return to Dawn before it's too late. The recovery team locate the car quickly and start dragging it up out of the icy water. I feel like ordinarily they would just say, we'll check in the spring.
Yeah.
Thanks for the info.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you really think she's okay? How long did you say it was? 50 years? Yeah. I'm guessing she's not all right.
And also, you remember the exact spot 50 years later?
Yeah. Dawn is obviously disturbed to be confronted by Alma in a wedding dress and points his flashlight right at her face. But it doesn't change this time. It stays a human face. He tosses the light at her, and it flies right through her. She offers herself to him.
Don't you want to make love to me?
I really wanted him to be into it. Like, yeah, all right.
Dawn is too scared to respond. Do you guys recall the last time Craig Wasson played a man who was too scared to tell a girl with 3 boyfriends that, yes, he wanted to have sex with her desperately?
No, I don't remember. Blacked it from my memory.
It was 4 friends. She reaches out with a hand, but in the reverse angle, it is only slimy bones, and Dawn is set to screaming uncontrollably. The police finish pulling the car out of the pond, and for some reason, Ricky is invited to jerk open the door of the car that he left a murder victim in 50 years ago. Alma makes the same speech about watching the life run out of Dawn, and then throws off her veil to reveal the slimy skeleton face. Back at the car, Ricky cracks the door open, and the corpse of Eva seems to rise and climb out of the car toward him, as if alive, before collapsing into the snow. Ricky is terrified, but leans in close to watch the flesh slough off of Eva's skull.
Yeah, and then all these people just start showing up.
Yeah, it's just like more and more witnesses.
Yeah, it's like, who are these people?
Mary and Pippin show up in the back.
Yeah. And I guess this ends the curse?
Yeah, because in the house, Dawn's attacker has disappeared. Schrodinger's murder victim was revealed by the opening of the car, so the ghost of Eva's superposition has been erased. That's my theory. Is that they're like, well, you can't possibly know if that cat's still alive. Schrodinger, we put that cat in there 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't possibly know. It's both things, so it's a ghost. Dawn stares into the distance at something unseen, and then in a wide shot of Milburn, we hear the church bells ring and fade to black. The end.
So...
Ghost story.
So why now? Why is the ghost active? Or no, I guess she first became active while Dawn was teaching at this school,
right,
and sought him out,
which was like a few years ago, I guess.
Yeah, but for some reason felt that the 4 men who murdered her should live long and fruitful lives.
Well, they're not going to have any more kids. You gotta cut it off at the roots.
But why didn't she come back as a ghost when they were still young men?
I don't know.
And
why
their
didn't she
lives
prevent
then?
the births of Dawn and Dave?
Or, I don't get. So she couldn't get Dawn, but she goes, well, I'll get the other one. Like it's such a weird concept.
Yeah, because she has to kill all of them if she's trying to kill the family line.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to just be like, all right, whatever, I'll kill your brother and I'll come back.
Like you're not playing along.
Yeah. No, I don't know why she waited so long. It does seem like she just realized, oh shit, like these guys are going to die soon. I better kill them.
I better kill them before they die. I got to get my revenge somehow.
Yeah. And clearly her revenge is shit because these guys all lived to ripe old ages and they had like successful jobs in the city. Like everybody they lived full lives.
And there's no sign that Ricky is going to.
Yeah, he's going to be fine.
He's going to confess or claim, this is the woman we murdered.
But of everybody there, he, I think, is least at fault for her death, but he should have said something about what happened. He should have spilled the beans on her.
Right.
But Wanderley's the one who shoved her to the ground and actually caused her death.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor is the one who pronounced her dead, and then Houseman is the one who was like shoved her in a car and pushed her into the pond. So Ricky was just there.
I guess he's the most likable.
That's why they cast Fred Astaire. He's so cute. I think he's a jerk though.
But why why did exhuming the car stop everything? If anything, it should have because unleashed more.
No, they open the car. That means that you're observing, and you're affecting.
Right. As soon as you measure it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's my theory.
I would have been happy had the corpse leapt out and killed him.
Sure.
Or
I don't know. I kind of like it exactly how it went because the first time I saw this movie, I was like 8 or 10. Like I was very young. And this image of the body moving in the back of the car toward him stuck with me. The guy falling out of the window stuck with me. Basically, those are the only two scenes I could have like drawn a picture of for you, because I think I had nightmares about them for years after, until I came back to this movie and I was like, oh, that's what that's from. Oh my God.
See, what I needed was he gets the door open, he sees her corpse, and then like she either grabs him into the car and the tow cable snaps and the car rolls back into the water, killing him. Like, I needed them all to die for this to make sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like his death would have, like I don't really understand killing the two kids. So like, I feel like killing the last of the 4 original guys
does make sense.
Makes it so that the rest of them are off the hook. It's
but
like,
you got to keep Ricky alive in case they want to do a sequel.
The other woman
I
that
forgot.
they killed.
Oh my God, this other lady we killed.
We were busy that summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes no sense why anything is tied to the house, because yes, she was knocked unconscious there, but that's not where she died.
Right.
And so everything should have been
And where
happening.
did that house come from? Because like John Houseman even says like nobody came looking for her. It's as if she never existed. And it's like, wait, was she a ghost before?
Before she was a ghost?
Before you killed her? Like, how did she get a house? How did she spread a rumor that she was a rich lady moving to town without money?
Prequel, Ghost House.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ghost House. Changes from the book. The twin sons are actually twin nephews in the book. Unrelated.
So they're less associated with it and they still have to die?
They're less associated. Apparently, Wanderley had a brother whose children are being judged. It doesn't really...
But not the brother.
Right. Don comes to town after his Uncle Edward's death, not in response to his brother's death, which I think makes more sense. Because he's just like, oh, my uncle died, I'm going to the funeral. But his brother died like years before the book starts. But the elderly Wanderley is dead at the beginning of the book. Twin brother David died a few years earlier, inspiring a horror story that Don has been writing. There was a 5th Chowder member named Louis Benedict, who is written out because they're like, too many people.
Yeah.
Cut it out. Dr. Jaffrey is the one who jumps from the bridge, not Wanderley. So they give that death to a different old man.
But he jumps or falls?
Well, it's the same. He gets scared off by the ghost of this woman.
Well, all right. But but it's different to have killed yourself versus
right, yeah,
being
no, he's not doing it out of guilt. He's spooked off. The Bate brothers are introduced in one of James's stories. Apparently, he taught Fenny Bate, and then he learned somehow that the child was being abused by his older brother Gregory, until one day Gregory fell off a ladder and Fenny ran from the scene. And so he thought, okay, well, at least Fenny's safe now because his older brother's dead. He can't molest him anymore. And then the younger brother also died somehow. So both of them are dead. They're ghosts the whole time in the book. So when they start running into these people who are identifying themselves as Gregory and Fenny Bate, they're like, no, you're not, because those people are dead.
Right.
Late in the novel, Dawn concludes that Eva is actually a Manitou, a shape-shifting spirit, having taken on the fictional names of Eva and Alma, as well as a couple other characters. There's like 3 or 4 characters in the book that are all supposed to be the same woman.
I think they're sometimes referred to as sea cows.
No, that's something else, sweetie. Manitou or the sea cow.
I thought it was somewhere in Canada.
No.
Manitou, Canada?
No, that's Moose Jaw.
And that's where Gene Hackman was the mayor?
No, that's Welcome to Mooseport. As is often the case, author Straub was disappointed with the changes to his story, but he has stressed that there was nothing wrong with the cast. He liked the people that were cast in each of the parts. He thought they did the characters justice, but he didn't like all the stuff that they were like, we don't need to do this scene or we don't need to do that scene. But again, it's a 500-page book. Honestly, the movie doesn't even need to be 2 hours long. There's a lot of old men moaning in their sleep that we could have shortened a little bit.
And 2 trips to a house that add nothing to the story.
Yeah, and I know that we're supposed to know that all of these men are plagued by this guilt, but it honestly interrupts the flow to every time we see Jaffrey freaking out in bed or Wanderley freaking out in bed, we like interrupt that moment to cut to Ricky just sort of being upset in bed and then come back to the guy that we were paying attention to who something happens to in the scene. The character of Ricky Hawthorne actually comes back in a later Straub novel, 1983's Floating Dragon. But I don't think he's in the book, but he's referenced as being like the uncle of one of the characters in the book. But yeah, what are we thinking? This is a big thumbs up for me. I love the visuals in here. I think the story is really fun, and this is one that sticks with me. And I love the performances from all the old men.
Yeah, I'm a little torn. I didn't really care for it, aside from sort of those
epic moments
where we had some pretty great practical effects, makeup effects. The melting skin off the corpse was pretty good. I liked the guy landing by the pool. The falling was a little cheesy because you could see the bad roto. But,
yeah, I think what I like
it's
about
called
it,
a penis.
Instead of how like most horror movies rely on jump scares more often, and I feel like there are a few here where there's like a loud noise when the face is revealed, but there's so many moments that are just terror at the situation, and I always appreciate that in a horror film.
Yeah, I think it just didn't grab me. I feel bad. I don't think I can give it a thumbs down. I'm gonna give it a thumbs up, but I felt very mediocre about it.
Okay,
I'll give it a thumbs down. No problems. I think some of the visual effects were really interesting. Again, I'm using the word interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like
it's a choice.
Yeah. It's like I guess maybe that's easier than breaking a window or having an actor fall through a window or.
But it's definitely a choice to be like, all right, David, just lay down and your dick's just gonna be flapping around the whole way down this building. Is this necessary?
Is this gonna be helicoptering around?
We got it cropped out. Don't worry about it.
Should I manscape at all? No. You're good. You're good just the way God made you.
Perfect.
But aside from like the one really creepy moment for me was on the bridge. I didn't understand what was going on. And so I didn't know like if they were going to succeed in ending something because they just were like doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's like, why are you going in the house? Why are you bringing a knife?
Why are you exhuming the body right this second?
Yeah. Like,
how did you know that was going to kill the ghost down the street?
Yeah, exactly. How did you even know that the ghost was attacking because you left?
How did you know that Alma and Eve are the same person?
Yeah. Why didn't you just take Don when you left the house? His leg's broken. He's got another leg. You help him out.
He's got other legs. What do we think of Letterboxd? Out of 172, Richard, where do you have Ghost Story?
I have it at 132, which puts it below Tuck Everlasting, but above the Bushido Blade.
All right.
I have it at 129. It is below Rollover and above Tarzan the Ape Man.
Below Rollover? A dagger in my heart. I have it in 39.
Wow.
It's right under Night Riders, and it's just above Halloween 2. That's what my heart says.
Well, your heart doesn't care about a good story.
It cares about a ghost story. Specifically, Ghost Story. Our director here was John Irvin. He previously directed The Dogs of War and the 79 Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy miniseries. After this, he directs Arnold's Raw Deal, Hamburger Hill. He directed 1991's Robin Hood, but not that 1991's Robin Hood. This one starred Patrick Bergen as Robin Hood with Uma Thurman as Maid Marian. The novel was from Peter Straub. He only had a couple other things that were adapted, but his disappointment with this meant that he tended not to lend out his books for adaptation after this. The screenwriter here was Lawrence D. Cohen. He's a Stephen King regular who just previously had written the screenplay for Carrie, and then he followed this up with the miniseries of It and Tommyknockers. The music here came from Philip Sard, or Sardi. The producers wanted to find someone with a style similar to the score of 1971's Le Chat, and eventually reached out to that film's composer, who reused many segments from that film in the score here.
Yeah, the score was also much too lighthearted a lot of times.
And it got way over dramatic when scary things were happening, but I love when that happens. Like, even the first, like, little droplet going past the full moon over the title card is like, and I was just like, this is awesome. 20s radio music. Because he was hired from France, he has lots of foreign film composing credits, very few I recognize, but he followed this by scoring Quest for Fire and later The Manhattan Project. The cinematographer here was Jack Cardiff. Early in his career, he lit Black Narcissus, The Black Rose, and The African Queen. So far on the show, he's worked on The Awakening and The Dogs of War, and later he lights Conan the Destroyer, Cat's Eye, and Rambo 2. The editor here was Tom Rolfe. He previously cut The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, The Trial of Billy Jack, French Connection 2, and Taxi Driver. We've seen his work so far on Heaven's Gate, and he's back later cutting War Games, The Right Stuff, Jacob's Ladder, Heat, The Horse Whisperer, and Equilibrium. The makeup here came from Dick Smith. He is the makeup effects artist from Exorcist. He did the Reagan and Father Merrin makeup. We've also seen his work in House of Dark Shadows, Altered States, Scanners, Nighthawks, The Fan. Later, he'll work on Starman, Poltergeist 3, Death Becomes Her, and Forever Young, among many others. And one of his rotting ghost face models for this film didn't appear in the final cut, and so was reused in 1999's House on Haunted Hill in the remake. Fred Astaire played Ricky Hawthorne. Mr. Astaire is in most people's top 3 to 5 dancers of all time. His credits date back to the early 30s for titles like The Gay Divorcee, Top Hat, Follow the Fleet, Holiday Inn, Easter Parade, Funny Face, Finian's Rainbow, and The Towering Inferno, for which he received his only Oscar nomination, though he was presented with an honorary statue in 1950. We saw him fairly recently on the show, dancing with Ginger Rogers. Do you recall where?
Xanadu?
No.
Was that a flashback?
More recently.
Yeah.
Oh.
There may be trouble ahead.
Was it in Pennies from Heaven?
That's right. That's the scene where they're dancing out on the stage that they recreated with Steve Martin and Bernadette Peters.
I believe your note was that he was very upset. That
Yeah, he didn't like that they kind of re-edited the scene and then changed the story of it. He was insulted by that. But it was Ken Adams rebuilding it. Just be happy that it looks neat. That's all. Astaire supposedly spent a lot of this film terrified that he would die or be murdered during the production. I don't know why he was so terrified that was going to happen specifically while working on this movie. But this was his last film, but he did live until 1987. So his fears were unrealized. Melvyn Douglas played John Jaffrey, the doctor. Before this, he was in Ninotchka, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, HUD, for which he won his first Oscar, The Tenant, and Being There, for which he won his second Oscar. We saw him last in The Changeling. His granddaughter is Ileana Douglas from Stir of Echoes and Happy Texas. This was his final film, but he actually passed away between production and release. So he did not get to see this film.
So funny. When I was watching Goliath, the Billy Bob Thornton Liar show. There's a whole season arc where Ileana Douglas is just in these scenes where at a casino bar. Yeah. She's just chatting him up. Like, she's got no role in the show. It's just like whenever he's at the bar, Ileana Douglas is already there.
She's so great, though. I love her. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. played Edward Wanderley. His first film credit was uncredited as Newsboy in 1916. He went on to 31's Little Caesar, The Prisoner of Zenda. He was the first husband of Joan Mommy Dearest Crawford and the son of superstar Douglas Fairbanks. This was his last film, and he lived till 2000. John Houseman was Sears James. His first credit was as a Keystone Cop in the late 30s, and then long gaps wherein he taught acting before his most celebrated work as Charles Kingsfield Sr. in The Paper Chase to an Oscar win. We've seen him now in 3 Days of the Condor, The Fog, Holy Moses, and My Bodyguard, but Richard and I tend to think first of his appearance as himself in Scrooge.
You guys have got an ad with America's favorite old fart, reading a book in front of a fireplace.
I also like his appearance in The Naked Gun, where he's the driving instructor.
Right, yeah, on the show, right? The police squad?
Oh, no, in the film, Naked Gun.
Oh, is he in the film?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's like, extend your arm, extend your middle finger. Very good.
Craig Wasson played Don and David. We've seen him now in Carney, Schizoid, and then just recently as the lead in Four Friends. He's back later in Body Double and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Patricia Neal played Stella. She was Helen Benson in The Day the Earth Stood Still, Marcia Jeffries in A Face in the Crowd, and a different Alma, Alma Brown, in HUD, for which she won an Oscar. Alice Krige played Alma and Eva. We just had her in Chariots of Fire. She's back later for Barfly, a lot of Star Trek stuff as the Borg Queen. Mm-hmm. She's in Reign of Fire. She's Maddie on Deadwood, Morgana in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Ire in Thor 2, The Witch in Gretel and Hansel, and Mrs. MC in the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot.
So what I love about Alice Krige is that I can only really identify her when she's in extremely heavy makeup.
Yeah.
Like, whenever they need someone to do, like, amazing acting and heavy makeup, they get Alice Krige, because she's in Carnival Row. And as soon as I saw, like, this, like, crazy monster gypsy lady, I was like, that's Alice Krige.
Yeah.
I can tell right there.
That's probably how I am with Doug Jones. Where
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
Like, I can only tell it's just like, well, there's a big string bean with a weird head. That's probably Doug Jones.
Yeah. So I was so glad to find out that she was doing this almost all of her career wearing, like, grotesque, having
creepy
grotesque
faces.
makeup.
Jacqueline Brookes played Millie. She was Aunt Ethel in Paternity earlier this season. She's back for The Entity, Sea of Love, and Naked Gun 2.5. So we have multiple Naked Gun characters. Miguel Fernandes played Gregory Bate. We've seen him before as Roberto Asante in The Kidnapping of the President. Later, he's Khan in MacGyver episode The Escape, where Mac has to break out of a prison. He also appears in 1983's Killer Snake movie Spasms. Lance Holcomb played Fenny Bate. He was Scotty in Christmas Evil. Philip Hopkins in Venom next season. So he and his brother, actor Fernandes, are both in Killer Snake films. Venom and Spasms also both star Oliver Reed. So they're both in Killer Snake movies with Oliver Reed. Mark Chamberlain played young John Jaffrey. He was Charles in Christmas Evil. Tim Choate played young Ricky Hawthorne. He was Eastman in Times Square and a sailor in Blowout. Kurt Johnson played young Edward Wanderley. He was David Branham in The Fan earlier this season. And Ken Olin played young Sears James. This was his first film, but he transitioned to directing, including turns on Freaks and Geeks, Felicity, West Wing, The Man in the High Castle, and 32 episodes of This Is Us. Of the 4 younger version actors, Olin was the only one to survive to his 60s. The others died at 33, 49, and 55 from AIDS, a motorcycle accident, and a bicycle accident. Brad Sullivan played Sheriff Hardesty. He shows up in The Sting, Slapshot, and The Island before this. He's back later in The Untouchables, The Dream Team, The Abyss, Sister Act 2, and Bushwhacked. Michael O'Neill played Churchill. This is his first film. He shows up later in Lorenzo's Oil and Bushwhacked again. The Shining miniseries. So both of the cops were in Bushwhacked. I hope they were cops again. The Shining miniseries, Dreamcatcher, 16 West Wings as Secret Service agent Ron Butterfield, which is what I know him best from. Guy Boyd played Omar Norris. His wife Sissy was a choreographer on The Prowler earlier this season. We've seen him in small parts for Ticket to Heaven and Only When I Laugh. Later he shows up in Body Double, Lucas, and Sister Act. Robert Burr played Principal. We saw him last as Ralph in Tattoo. Helena Carroll played Mrs. Meredith. She was Sheila Coyle in The Friends of Eddie Coyle, Hester in The Jerk, and last season she was Prudence in Loving Couples. Robin Curtis played Rhea Dedham. That's one of the Dedham girls for which the Dedham Pond is named. This was her first film. She played Saavik in Star Trek III, the part initiated by Kirstie Alley in next season's Wrath of Khan. But Richard and I know her best for a rare recurring MacGyver love interest appearance as Kate Connolly from the first season episodes The Gauntlet and Friends. She returned to Star Trek for a pair of Next Gen episodes as Talera, and more recently reprised the role of Saavik for Star Trek podcast Starship Excelsior in 2016. I don't know if that's canon. There's a lot of fan Star Trek stuff, and they use a lot of the cast. James Green played the mailman. He was Cartwright in 3 episodes of The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. More recently, he's appeared in 16 episodes of Parks and Rec as Councilman Milton. Deborah Offner played Helen. We saw her last as Sarah in A Small Circle of Friends. More recently, she appeared on Orange is the New Black, Blue Bloods, Horace and Pete, and Shiva Baby. And Virginia Bingham was Sears' mother. Do we see Sears' mother in this movie?
I guess we did.
She played Kathy Landry in Borderline. Those are all the credits I have for this one.
It's a lot more credits than I was expecting. I remember like 6 people were in this movie.
I think that's everything for Ghost Story. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Heartbeeps, which IMDb describes like so. 2 household robots run away and try to start a family.
All right.
We leave you now with the trailer for Heartbeeps.
It has the investigating ability of 1,000 detectives, the firepower of 100 tanks. It can't be outsmarted. It can't be outrun. It's Crime Buster.
I am in pursuit of 4 missing robots. Belcom, Aquacom, Keskill, and Little Phil. Be on the lookout for Heartbeeps.